Well, I started off my advocacy involving actually gay rights and sexual orientation discrimination. Then I started working when Governor Brown was first time around in the 1970s. A few of us got him to create a Commission on Personal Privacy to look into privacy issues for a broad spectrum of populations, and we made sure to include people with disabilities in that spectrum. And out of that study came an awareness that certain populations shared a certain interest in privacy, and that the most important was bodily privacy, that is, freedom from violence. And hate crimes were very prevalent. And so there were some calling for sexual orientation to be added to the hate crime law in California that dealt with race and religion and color and national origin. And I said, that's great, but I think that we should include disability status and age for seniors, and that there are vulnerable populations that sometimes are targets because of hate, sometimes just because of ignorance and bias, and that we should include all three categories. And so we were able to keep that package of all three together, and Governor George Deukmejian, a Republican, signed that into law, and there was, for the first time, protection against hate crimes for people with disabilities, for seniors, and for the gay and lesbian community. And throughout then my career, as my interests shifted from topic to topic where I saw there was a need, I made sure to include people with disabilities. So the next wave of activism involved family diversity, and that families come in many types, and that people who have family members with disabilities are a special population that needed attention, just as single-parent families and unmarried couples and gay and lesbian couples and so on. So again, kind of a coalition approach to family diversity. So over time, I went through, different waves of activism, but they always included people with disabilities. But then I thought, okay, I wrote a book about my 40 years of activism called The Domino Effect. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna, maybe semi-retire or whatever, and wrote the book a few years ago. And then all of a sudden, I started having cases come my way that involved people with developmental disabilities, including autism. And my colleague, Dr. Nora Baladarian, who's worked in the field for decades, would send me a case and say, can you look at this? Because, she's not a lawyer and I'm a lawyer. And so I started looking at cases, and that's when I became introduced to this, what's called the adult guardianship system. And in California, it's called limited conservatorships, and the abuses of the rights of people with developmental disabilities, including autistic people, within that system. And I all of a sudden found myself having to learn a lot about disability law, a lot about Americans with Disabilities Act, a lot about conservatorship law. And my expertise had been civil rights, constitutional law, appellate litigation, politics, media, and all of a sudden I was called to bring all of that to the forefront in a battle for justice for people who are being brought into or a part of the limited conservatorships. So, and one of them, which we'll talk about later, had opened my eyes up to voting rights abuses of people with developmental disabilities.
So tell our audience where they can find out more information about the Disability and Abuse Project.
All right. You can go to on the website, you can go to spectruminstitute.org. And spectruminstitute.org will take you to an opening page. We actually have two projects. The one is the Disability and Abuse Project, and the other is the Disability and Guardianship Project. The Disability and Abuse Project deals with all aspects of life where people with developmental disabilities are victims of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, etc. And it deals with psychological, social, political, legal issues involving abuse of people with disabilities, which is way too rampant, way too, I mean, that's a topic all in of itself.
As we discussed in the first segment,
Yes.
this mate crime, which I don't know if you overheard what
Yeah, I
we were
did hear,
saying.
yeah.
And so is this a resource that families, let's say a family has someone in the family they believe has been the victim of a crime and abuse. Would your organization be able to help them with that?
Well, not really. We don't take direct cases.
Okay.
But whenever that happens, people should call Adult Protective Services or Child Protective Services
Okay.
or the police and report it. What we do, research, education, policy work, and advocacy
I see.
on class-based issues. Although when it came to guardianship, I found myself being drawn into a few individual cases when they come your way and it's presented right there, then and there, then sometimes we've gotten involved in an individual case. But our organization is one of just volunteerism. We don't have grants and budgets and government money and all of that. It's volunteers, working on, as I say, research, education, and policy. And so if you go to our website, you'll find resources that will help you become educated or educate others about these issues. And there are a lot of self-help publications that we have about abuse. And then when it comes to the guardianship, adult guardianship, there are also many publications that are available to those who have been, quote, victims of the adult guardianship system.